The land of Palestine is sacred to several religions. Near the border between Asia and Africa, it has been inhabited since the first humans left their homeland. In 1948, a British colonial project set up the State of Israel there.
We are the real people of this land, so how can you call this colonization when we drive you out? Our temple was here 3,000 years ago in our eternal capital, Jerusalem. God promised this land to us.
When they check your DNA, it fits within the bounds of European DNA and has very few markers from the Middle East, whereas our DNA is virtually identical to that found in ancient Canaanites 5,000 years ago. If there was a United Kingdom of Solomon, and archaeologists still debate that, then we were the people who built it. Our Canaanite ancestors also built Jerusalem, long before there existed a people called Israel, and our ancestors lived in it.
At the end of the Bronze Age, 3,300 years ago, the great civilizations of Sumeria and Egypt had already existed for millennia in the Fertile Crescent. Much of Palestine was peopled by wandering tribespeople. There were two exceptions: the Phoenicians in the north, at cities like Tyre, and the Peliset, a Mycenaean Greek people who arrived there at the end of the Bronze Age and gave their name, Palestine, to the area. The great powers on either side of Palestine continued to vie for control. Sometimes Egypt, sometimes the Hittites, sometimes the Assyrians or Babylonians ruled over the Canaanite and Palestinian cities, cities like Jerusalem, ruled by a tribal coalition called Israel. Jewish stories said that the tribal federation who ruled Jerusalem had been enslaved in Egypt and then conquered Canaan, but there is no evidence for this. After a brief rule of some of Canaan, they were defeated by the Assyrians. After conquest by the Babylonians, the people of Jerusalem, in exile, evolved an elaborate history of their rule of their homeland. There were, in fact, only brief times when they controlled any of Palestine. In the following centuries of Persian, Greek, and Roman rule, there was another brief time when the rule of Palestine passed to the Israelites. However, writers agree that by soon after Roman conquest, 50% of the people lived outside Palestine in the Mediterranean area. Roman rule was a time of hardship because the imperial Christian religion imposed severe restrictions on Jewish people. The Muslim conquest by Umar allowed Jewish people free movement again in their ancient city. It is to Islam that Jews owed their right to pray at the temple site.
After the brutal reconquest by the Christian Crusaders, darkness again fell. Jewish people were persecuted relentlessly by Christians over the next centuries in Europe. This long period culminated in the Nazi genocide of the early 1940s. Millions of Jews were murdered at concentration camps. Out of this Holocaust, the vision arose of Jewish people leaving Europe and returning to Israel. But wait, there were already people living in Palestine. How could people imagine moving millions of Jewish people there? The answer lies in a solution as brutal as the persecution of Jews itself.
Colonialism, where one people simply move into and occupy the territory of another, had been used by the British and many other European powers. As usual, it depends on declaring the conquered land terra nullius, empty land, and claiming a prior right.
Philanthropic colonization is a failure. National colonization will succeed. We will say to them, move, and if they disagree, if they resist by force, we will force them to move. We will hit them on their heads and force them to move.
In 1948, urged by the British who controlled Palestine, the United Nations agreed to set up a Jewish state in the Palestinian Mandate, sharing the area with the Palestinian people who already lived there. The process has gone exactly as colonialism always has, in India, in America, in New Zealand, and so on. It ends in the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, of the native population. But this time, we watch it on social media. This time, we can stop it.
That's why we must support the ICC and ICF World Courts. That's why we must protest and refuse to cooperate with Trump Gaza. This time, it must be stopped.